What's up, guys? It's Embarrasses here, and I want to talk about today's headlines about China's DeepSeek AI platform and how it makes my head spin. Does it make your head spin too? If not, you're not alone, because it made me question if I know anything about AI anymore, because the headline versus the facts are starkly different. But as with anything China, guys, the truth is often way more nuanced or even hidden. So let's talk about the facts here. First of all, the media is making headlines, saying things like DeepSeek's R1 creator says its model was developed using less advanced and fewer computer chips than employed by tech giants in the United States. Okay, I guess it's kind of true, but I will say it's very misleading with how it's being portrayed. And I'm not blaming DeepSeek, but the many media outlets and commentators who are describing DeepSeek as being trained with lesser chips, which is also kind of true and an odd term. By chips, I believe what they mean are the GPUs that are the heart of AI that are used for training and inference. And so that's what we're all using today when we're using our different chatbots, right? When we're using OpenAI, ChatGPT, when we're using DeepSeek, when we're using Qwen. And the industry standard, though, on that note, again, like I said, it's always been Nvidia. It still is today, but somehow this created investor panic. We can see what happened to the Nvidia stock when this news was released here. They all thought Nvidia was done for, not me, and I still don't really understand the case for that. Maybe I can understand a little bit of a case for some adjusted guidance, but not just yet, and we'll talk about why. And actually, at some point in the future, though, now this may happen. Okay, maybe we're pricing in what may happen in the future with the Nvidia stock there. But I'd just like to point out that AMD has tried its hardest to compete with CUDA, right, which is Nvidia's API for developing applications, right? They have their own ROCm. It's called experimental. Let's just be honest here. AMD has utterly failed. They are not able to compete at all. Okay, it's also likely, though, in the future, some Chinese companies like Threads or Huawei will be able to do that, but we're not there right now. And in fact, they are all training and running off Nvidia GPUs, or chips, as they like to call them in the media. Okay, so Nvidia is not done for. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but I do think actually we'll get to the reason why. I'm not sure. And anyway, first of all, guys, this interpretation of the paper that DeepSeek published is, I think, where everything goes wrong. It's not DeepSeek's fault, it's just how it's been interpreted. Okay, I don't agree with the hype and the headlines, and so let's just look at the raw facts and data so we can understand what they're trying to claim. That was the hardest thing for me to understand. And there's a bit of truth to it, but it's far from being reflective of reality. The first fact here that we need to understand is that the so-called chips we're talking about essentially the current generation of Nvidia's GPUs for training AI. Right, the previous one to this one was the A100. Well, they released the H100, and that is what essentially almost got shipped to China. But because of all these embargoes and trade war and all this other, I don't know, they call them chip wars, I guess, what they did is they had to kind of downgrade the H100 GPU. So they rebranded it as the H800 GPU. And so it has less FP64 performance and about 30% less NVLink performance for interconnecting the GPUs. Okay, so I guess technically, sure, you could call it a lesser chip, but let's be real here. Let's talk about the improvements over the previous generation. So the H800 is still 9 times faster for training than the previous generation A100 and 30 times faster for inference. So despite this, we should keep in mind that also each H800 GPU, they cost about $40,000 US. Okay, so the headlines and interpretation of DeepSeek's paper are simply frustrating to me here, guys. When I first heard the headlines, I was very excited when I saw the news claiming they used a lesser chip, which is hardly at all true, like I say. I would be more excited, though. My interpretation when I heard that, then great, wow, they found a way to train on 10, 15-year-old GPUs with 4G of RAM. Then we could say Nvidia is done for, and that changes the game. Not that it wasn't impressive, though, okay? Let's actually talk about raw facts again. Now, they say OpenAI, they cost about $80 to $100 million to train on, okay? And DeepSeek cost about $3 million. So we're talking on average about maybe 30 times efficiency that DeepSeek was able to find. Okay, so that is still very impressive. The whole lesser chip thing I don't think is so impressive because they're not really a huge difference. Okay, but still, I guess it did shock the world when they saw that. I think the real impressive feat, like I said, though, is just the fact that they were able to be so much more efficient. Like if you had given them the H100, they probably would have been able to spend maybe a little bit less, maybe argue even 30% less out of that $3 million. But it's not about the so-called chip or GPUs that's the real story here. The real story is the efficiency that they are able to find in training, right? Using just merely about 2,000 GPUs. That is impressive. But it's not as impressive to me as what I was hoping that they use very old GPUs. When they say lesser chip, I thought we're talking about several generations of like, first generation Tesla GPUs here with, like I said, very restricted amounts of RAM. Okay, that's not clear, obviously, and not true. And with that said, though, I think what the real story here is, though, we can actually say is DeepSeek really embarrassed the US tech scene. And I wonder if these headlines are just made to make the US government less angry about this blank check that they wrote saying that we need $500 billion to fund AI to secure the US as the dominant player in artificial intelligence. Okay, and this is the point where I think that they're just maybe trying to compensate for their incompetence by saying it's not our fault. We didn't know China can make use of older, lesser chips, that they're calling them these days. When that's not really true. Okay, the biggest story, as I say again, is the efficiency and algorithms and training that they are able to find. And so my conclusion on this issue, guys, is that DeepSeek has done something very amazing by training way more efficiently than the big US tech houses like OpenAI and Meta. So this absolutely should send the US tech stocks, especially AI companies, plummeting. But if anything, this just really affirms or reaffirms Nvidia's dominance. Okay, this time they were lucky. Perhaps we're not far away from China using its own domestic GPUs. And I think this is the biggest mistake with all these embargoes and trade wars here, that all these things are just pushing a place like China just to go domestic, right? So this means Huawei and more threads at some point probably will be leading the next generation of AI. And if they're able to produce GPUs that are better or similar for a lot less, if we keep heading down this road, then they could be the dominant player in the scene. But at this point, we have to be real that the ecosystem in AI is still basically exclusively dominated by Nvidia in terms of if we're looking at doing things in TensorFlow and PyTorch. Also, they even use the Open API, API here to deploy their language models. Okay, and they're still using CUDA, which again is based on Nvidia. So we're not going to see any change there just yet, guys. So anyway, what are your thoughts, guys? Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys next time.